performance against the Philadelphia Eagles there. This definitely seemed like a bounce back opportunity kind of game for them. Um, they had a punt blocked, which really kind of changed the momentum of this game. They're still 3-2. I still think they could have a successful season, and they certainly seem to be on the up and up. If you consider, they were 5-11 last year. This is Matt Rule's second season, so I still think there's some good things there. Sam Darnold is metamorphosizing into this running quarterback. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns
Yeah.
already, which is kind of cool. But I think they're around where they belong. You could say there should be a little higher, a little lower, but to me, they're somewhere around the middle right now.
Yeah, I mean, and then obviously CMC getting hurt again is kind of big for them, and that takes away probably 3/4 of their offense. Just to be flat out
Yeah,
honest about that. So coming in
yeah.
at number 15, you have them dropping in this week's power rankings are the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, a
Ooh.
little bit concerning with the Broncos right now. I mean, you got Bridgewater. He doesn't turn the ball over, but there's not a lot of explosive plays either. The defense has been pretty good, but they allowed Ben Roethlisberger to get back on track, and he has not looked sharp at all this season. So a couple of bad signs for them. If Drew Lock has to play any extended amount of time for this team, they're definitely in some trouble. I still think they could finish around 500 or so. But I don't think they're quite there just yet. And this is a really tough division that they play in.
Yeah, and I mean, I was really vocal about the Denver Broncos being not a very good 3-0 team, and
Yeah.
but I also at this point, like I'm kind of defending them now because I start looking at them and I start looking at their schedule ahead, and I'm like, I could see them winning this week, I could see them winning next week, I could see them doing some good things. Bridgewater, yes, he doesn't turn the ball over. He threw the ball for almost 300 yards last week and threw for 2 touchdowns, and I think he did have one interception,
Yeah.
but he didn't have a bad stat line. They can't establish anything collectively at the same time. You know what I mean? So either the
Yeah.
passing game is working during a drive and then that gets shut down, or the running game is working during a drive and the passing game isn't, and then that gets shut down. They can't put anything together collectively where they can just get a drive going where they'll rush for 10 yards, throw for 4, rush for another 10, throw for 4, then throw a bomb downfield or something. They can't seem to get that rhythm going with their offense right now. Maybe it's just because they're not playing the New York Giants, New York Jets, and Jacksonville Jaguars anymore.
Yeah, they had a pretty cream puff beginning part of their schedule. They have a pretty good running back. They drafted, I believe, out of North Carolina, Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
He's been able to have rip off a few good runs, but I agree, a lot of cohesion on that unit so far.
I do think that they beat the Raiders this week, though.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll be a very interesting game to watch. Obviously, the Raiders with their new coach. I actually am going to go the opposite way. I think it'll be a breath of fresh air with Gruden out. I think the players will respond. They looked really flat against the Bears this past week. I think they'll be energized actually by Gruden's departure, and I actually expect a good performance from them.
Interesting. So I think we need to get some cream puff merch. Like I kind of like that like that line. So coming in at number
Nice.
14, you have the Chicago Bears. They're moving up in your power
Ooh.
rankings.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Combs, your team is on the rise. They've won a couple in a row. I was a little critical of Justin Fields, but I've liked what I've seen over the last couple of games.
Really?
They still have a good defense. And it's funny. Almost all the teams I had in the top 10, most of them won, and then those next 7 or 8 teams, most of them lost. I feel weird about the Bears being number 14 because they really haven't been. Their losses, they've looked pretty terrible, but they're a team that's coming off a couple wins. So I put them at 14. I don't know if they'll stay there. I don't know how good Fields is going to be. Um, but
Well, I
they've
mean,
got
his
a
passer
bit of
rating is only like
momentum.
a 64 right now.
Okay.
His passer rating is really low. I've been kind of disappointed in which they're using him, but they are getting back to Bears football. They're running the ball really well. They're playing good defense. They're not using the passing game like I thought that they would under Justin Fields, but I think having Justin Fields under center has actually weirdly, oddly enough, opened up stuff for the run game.
Yeah, he's a threat to take off. You got Montgomery back there. Trying to think of their other back.
Damian Williams.
Damian Williams, which is a really nice
Right.
pickup, the former Chief. So
And then they got Khalil Herbert, who looked really good last week in the absence of Montgomery, since he's going to be down for the next 5 to 6 weeks.
right. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
All right. So
So
then, sorry, and then coming in at number
that's good.
13, you had the Cincinnati Bengals moving down.
Yeah, I just moved them down one spot. This is a game they definitely could have won, but they also almost lost it about 4 different times. Mason Crosby couldn't get it together on those field goals. They were gonna move them apart through so they were as wide as the whole end zone, I think, at one point, but, pretty good performance by the Bengals. I think they hung in there with the Green Bay Packers. Joe Burrow, I think at this point in his career, we can say this guy's a franchise quarterback. I think the Bengals finally got it right. They got their guy. Dalton was a perfectly good draft pick for them. He led them to the playoffs, I think, 4 times. But I think they're looking for something a bit more. And I think eventually Burrow can be that guy to. I don't know if he can lead them to the promised land. This is the Bengals, but at least lead them to the playoffs a few times.
Well, you better not have the Green Bay Packers in your top 10 then, because they have. I've got an argument for you if you've got the Green Bay Packers much higher than the Cincinnati Bengals,
Ooh,
because they did not want to win that game. They didn't want to win. They
well,
did everything they could to lose that game. Mason Crosby should have kicked his last kick ever after that game. I mean, it
yeah,
was just back and forth, miss kick, miss kick. That was. I got home from we had a basketball game, and I had gotten home right before, or no, I was helping my dad with the garage actually. So I missed most of the game. I got home right when he missed his first one. I'm like,
yeah.
huh. And then they went back and forth, and the funniest thing to me was a Cincinnati kicker thinking he made it and celebrating like he won the game, and he missed it by like 5 feet. It
Yeah.
wasn't even a close kick. But
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to kill them too much for their kicker having a really bad game. I still think the Packers are a good team. I don't want to
I would
spoil
kill them
where I
for
have them
needing
in.
a kicker to beat the Bengals.
Well, maybe the Bengals are a bit better than than what we thought. I mean,
Yeah.
they laid waste to the Steelers. I thought their defense looked really good in that game.
Yeah.
Joe Mixon, you could make the argument he's a top 10 running back.
Facts.
Okay, but not much argument there. Okay, so I think they're a decent team. They're just not quite really there yet. Let's remember they're similar to Carolina coming off a 5-win season. So I think they're still
Yeah.
figuring out how to win ball games.
Yeah.
So
Me-
that's part of what went into my thought process
I
there.
mean, you could have moved them up since they lost just like a 4-letter network did to the Chiefs, but we'll go ahead and move past that. Coming in at number 12,
Yeah.
you do have the Las Vegas Raiders fresh off of losing their coach and moving down and the rankings.
Yeah, I know I could have moved them down a few more than just the couple spots that they fell. It definitely a uninspiring performance against the Bears. I thought this was a game they probably should have won. Um, Derek Carr is also the luster is starting to come a little bit off him as well. But I stick by what I said earlier. I think that this new coach coming in, it could have a bit of an energizing effect on these players. I think a lot of players probably liked playing for Gruden. I can't speak to that for sure. I wasn't in the locker room with them, but they almost seemed kind of taken aback, like they were thinking about it during the game against Chicago, because they didn't seem like they were thinking about football. They were just a step too slow. So I think it's a bounce back opportunity, and it needs to be if they want to stay near that top 10.
Well, but also on the flip side of that coin is every NFL team every year has that one game where they simply forget to show up. Historically, it's the Packers when they play the 49ers last like 5 years in a row. So maybe that was just the Raiders game. They didn't show up because, sometimes just the grind of the season gets to you, some off field like issues like obviously, but I would be surprised if you have the Raiders in your top 20 come in 2 weeks just because John
Wow.
Gruden is a good coach. I mean, people can say he rode the coattails of Tony Dungy in Tampa Bay to win that Super Bowl, etc. But he also signed a 10-year, $100 million reason for a reason. He's part owner for the Las Vegas Raiders for a reason because he knows how to work the system. Hell, he hid big booty hose on his email for 10 years, right? So he obviously knows what he's doing. But
Yeah,
Raiders
right.
are at 12.
That's right.
And they're not last in the AFC West right now. So, I mean, definitely gotta
No.
put them up there. Coming in at number 11, moving up in the rankings, the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I'm still
like
trying to figure this team out. It seems like they're very inconsistent. They have a good performance followed up by a shaky one. We saw a lot, some of what I love about Jameis Winston and some of what I don't love so much. A gnarly interception down the middle early in the game, but then a bomb throw. I believe it's to Callaway later on in the game against the Washington football team. So I think they're doing enough. I think they're kind of like the Broncos. They're still trying to figure out what their identity is on offense. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I do think Taysom Hill needs to be part of that recipe. He does need to be at least an occasional ingredient as either a runner, receiver, or occasional quarterback as well.
Yeah.
But I think they just need to figure out their identity, maybe win a couple games in a row, and they're going to find themselves rising into my top 10.
And see, Graham, I got into this argument on Facebook with somebody because somebody said
Yeah.
the same thing. They're like, "Oh, it was a post where it said, you know, Jameis Winston, welcome to Jameis Winston, where you throw an ugly interception and then you throw a 73-yard pass for a touchdown."
Right.
Well, my argument there is he was like, "Oh, he's not having a great season. He's having a Jameis Winston season. He's having a good season." I said, "Well, first of all, let's look at it like this then. You take Tom Brady's numbers next to Jameis Winston's number. And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing Jameis Winston to Tom Brady.
I get it.
But
Yeah.
Tom Brady has a 65% completion percentage. Jameis Winston has a 60% completion percentage. Tom Brady's touchdown to interception ratio is 15-2. Jameis Winston's is 12-3, and the biggest one is the quarterback rating, the passer rating. Their passer rating, Tom Brady's a 108.5 on the season. Jameis Winston's a 108.1.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize he only had 3 picks and that his rating was that high. The first time we were on this show together, I went off about the whole top 10 thing. I still don't agree with that, but he's definitely creeping towards that status. He's protecting the ball a bit more. He's showing leadership skills.
Mm.
Let's not forget that whole laser surgery too, right? It seems like
Yeah.
he's seeing the field a bit better. So I think Saints are a good team and he's been a good quarterback. They just need to,
I-
like I said,
I
win a
think
few more games. Yeah.
People just put too much emphasis on the interceptions that year. They forget that he was one
Yeah.
of only 8 people ever to throw for 5,000 yards and 33
Jeez.
touchdowns
Here we
that
go
same
again.
season. And then you talk about the interceptions, and yet we had a guy like Brett Favre who made a Hall of Fame career out of it. And granted, no,
Yeah.
he never threw 30 interceptions, but he had 2 years where he threw 28 or more.
Right.
And he had 3 seasons where he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. And
They
Jameis has
both-
never
yeah.
had that.
They have that gunslinger kind of mentality, and you're going to get some interceptions. You're going to also get some jump out of your seat plays. So
Agreed.
I'm okay with that. And he's kind of proven himself to me big time this season. So
Right.
I'm going to cool it on the Jameis
And
hate.
that's why I brought it to him, is because I knew he's a Patriots fan and he loves Tom Brady. So I
Yeah.
said, well, let's compare him to a quarterback who you would call having a great season right now.
Yep.
Everybody's up in arms about Tom Brady, and then they're like, his comeback to me was, well, how many attempts has there been? Well, why does that matter? So if you're telling me that because Tom Brady's had 100 more attempts than Jameis Winston, but
doesn't matter.
okay, Tom Brady's had 100 more attempts, but he's only got 3 more touchdowns and 1 less interception. So if you ask me, I think with his passing and with his attempts, you could actually argue that Jameis Winston is more productive than Tom Brady has been this year.
The yards per attempt is likely higher. I haven't actually
yeah.
checked, to be honest. But
It is.
I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think part of the Saints' formula, a recipe for success, is him throwing 25 times or less.
Or less.
A-
Yeah.
And that's not an insult to him. I think he's a guy who kind of would need a strong run game, a good performance by the defense. They need to win games as a team because they're
Yeah.
not an overwhelmingly dominant roster.
And that's the other
So-
thing too, is they haven't had a very strong run game. Alvin Kamara's only got like 300 yards on the season.
Yeah,
is
and I don't
not-
even know who their other running backs are.
Yeah, it's insane, and they haven't had a good running game, but they're 3-2. It's not like they're losing football games, and he's
Yeah.
performing well. I think people, overlook him because of the fact that for whatever reason they like to laugh at him more than they like to praise him.
Well, yeah, there were some red flags with him coming out of Florida State as well, the crab legs, and I believe there was a sexual assault. But
Let's be real, Graham. If you could have free crab legs, would you take some free crab legs right now?
of course, I think part it was the swag. He just walked in there, he's saying what's up to people, and then he's out the door. And did you guys see the surveillance video?
Yeah.
It was pretty smooth.
Yeah, I mean,
Ah.
whatever. It is what it is. Speaking of pretty smooth and 25 pass attempts a game, the
Yeah.
Tennessee Titans move up in your power rankings, coming in at number 10.
Yeah, it's really a toss-up. Are they better than the Saints? I don't know, probably not, but they're in a division that they're almost for sure going to win, so I think that counts for something. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've been kind of feeding on a less than strong schedule, with the exception being that comeback win against the Seahawks in week 2, which kind of really galvanized that team. They beat the Jaguars and they beat the Colts. So, they're probably going to win 9 or 10 games or so, win that sad sack division. But this is a team that has been kind of battle tested the last couple of years. When they get there, Um, they've at least been in those kind of wars. So, I like Mike Vrabel as a coach. I think he's going to have his guys ready to fight, but they just don't seem as good a team as they were the last couple of years.
Yeah, basically, because King Henry is overrated. Let's just be flat out honest.
Oh,
And
stop it.
And like
he has
you
the
gave-
most yards in the league.
It doesn't matter. Okay, but with that being said, you can tell me that they beat the Jaguars
guy.
and they beat the Colts, two pretty bad teams right now, but they lost
Yeah.
to the Jets, an even worse team. So let's just go
Yeah.
ahead and throw that out there. But looking at their schedule moving forward, they do play the Bills, Chiefs, at Indy, at LA versus the Rams, and then the Saints. I mean, I could see 5 losses in a row for the Tennessee Titans real quick here. So I'm glad you don't have them in the top 10 because when they lose to the to the Bills, Chiefs, and Colts in the next 3 weeks, you don't want them dropping 15
Well, they are in the top 10,
spots.
right? They're at number 10.
They
Well,
are at
okay,
10,
true.
but that might be short lived. That is a tough upcoming schedule. Colts, they might be able to win that game. They have a
Colts
tough
are
time
better than they think.
finishing games lately, but we'll have to see. It was honestly a toss up, guys, and them leading their division was a big kind of
You-
factor in that.
Which I
You
like
want a
that.
hot take, Graham?
Oh, go ahead.
The Indianapolis Colts win that division.
Wow. Well,
I
they're
agree with
trailing by only 2 games.
Mhm.
Wentz looked great on Monday, honestly, and
Yep.
and I've been all over this. Like he's terrible. He was no good in Philadelphia, but he seems like he's getting his mojo back with Frank Reich and Pascal and some of these other receivers they got there. Jonathan
And he's
Taylor
healthy
just
again.
took off on that halfback screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's healthy again. But man, that was a monumental collapse, and that's a tough one to come back from. However, this team was 1-5 a couple years ago, and they ended up making a playoff game and winning one, I believe, in Andrew Luck's
Yeah.
final
Yeah,
season.
we're
So
very
don't
good,
write
very
them
good,
off.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not writing them off by any case. But they're in a tough spot right now.
Yeah, so just for hindsight, you do have the Colts sitting at number 26. So just want to throw that out there.